truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Last week we considered Satan's temptation of Jesus in the wilderness after his baptism by John. We discussed the question, does Satan exist? All of us experience temptation of one kind or another in our lives. Some of us frequently, others only occasionally. Whether temptation comes to us from our own subconscious or from outside ourselves is secondary to the fact that it does come and that we must deal with it. More important then is the question how to deal with it. In fact, how to deal with tests of any kind. Martin Luther flung an ink pot at the devil who had appeared to test him. A dark stain on the wall of Luther's cell was pointed out to tourists in support of this story. Unfortunately, our trials are not often so summarily dismissed. As a fellow monk once said to Swami Kriyananda, speaking of Satan, "If only I could get my hands on him." Jesus, during his temptation in the wilderness, overcame them and thereby set an example for all time by clinging the more determinedly to God. As Paramahansa Yogananda used to say, darkness cannot be driven out of a room with a stick. Once you turn on the light, however, the darkness will vanish as though it had never been. Jesus manifested this principle. The Bible tells us, therefore, that at last the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him. In the Bhagavad Gita, the point is clarified further by the added explanation that there are three qualities in human nature: sattvic, or spiritually elevating, rajasic, or ego-activating, and tamasic, or spiritually darkening. It is this triune aspect of human nature that the third chapter refers to with the words, "As fire is hidden by smoke, as a mirror is dulled by rust, and as an embryo is enclosed in the womb, so is the indwelling self enveloped by desire." Yogananda explained that each of these examples describes one of the qualities, or gunas. Sattva guna, that which elevates our consciousness, can be freed of an identity with ego by a little puff of meditation and right affirmation. Rajoguna, which embroils the ego in restless activity, can be worked off with a little more and a little longer effort. Tamoguna, embracing as it does such mental states as laziness and stupidity, can only be outgrown in time, since it inhibits even the desire for self-improvement. The example Jesus gave us was intended more for those in whom sattva guna is predominant. But if you yourself find elements in your consciousness that resist even the effort to cling to God in prayer and meditation, don't despair. Patience, as it has well been said, is the fastest path to God. As long as your efforts take you steadfastly in the right direction, you will come out right in time. Remember Yogananda's words, "A saint is a sinner who never gave up." If, however, your nature impels you, even against your will, to move in the wrong direction, toward egoic desires and away from God, strive at least to detach yourself mentally from your wrong actions, which are induced by habit. The time will come when their own stored up energy will tire and diminish. At that time, if you have not contributed to that energy by your consenting will, you will find it possible at last to redirect your energies more constructively. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
Whispers from Eternity, Master's Book of Prayer Demands. And this is on our topic. It's "Make me a lion of thy all-conquering wisdom." I, a lion cub of the Divine Mother, found myself thrown into life among the sheep of human frailties, of fear, failure, and disease. Living long among them, I learned to bleat with weakness, forgetting my lion nature and its roars, which could frighten away all petty, pestering sorrows. O lion of realization, thou didst drag me away from those bleeding sheep to the mirror smooth waters of meditation. There didst thou cry, gaze, but I beheld my eyes tightly shut, bleeding with fear. Thy roar of wisdom then reverberated through my body. Thou madest me by heart shaking and spiritual urging open my eyes, and there, lo, in the crystal pool of my inner peace, I saw my features to be even as thine own. Now I know myself as the lion of cosmic power. I will bleat no more with fear, weakness, and suffering, for I roar now with vibrant, almighty power. I bound about through the forest of all experiences, seizing little creatures of vexing worries, timid fears, and wild hyenas of disbelief, devouring them ruthlessly. O lion of immortality, roar through me thine all-conquering power of wisdom. So, turn this off so I don't have to. I can battle, not the air conditioner. You can do inner battle. So, this is an important and central topic for us all, because we all face tests. If we're not facing tests, then we're not putting it out enough energy to even realize that we have a test. You know, it's like that, did you hear that joke of a little boy and he was taking a test and the teacher came over and said, "Johnny, I hope I just didn't see you copying Fred's paper." And he said, "I hope you didn't either." we have to put out energy. You know, if we want to change from the depths of slumber as I ascend the spiral stairway of wakefulness. This is a line from Yogananda's poem, God, God, God. You know, we come up. That was the affirmation Dharma Devi was reading, from the slumbers of subconsciousness. Just like the lotus flower grows out of the mud of delusion. And our ascension in spirit happens when we begin to deeply yearn for change, when we want something more than the little mud puddle that we're playing in. You look up at the lives of the masters, and you look at the life of Paramahansa Yogananda, for example, and you think, what an incredible soul. That his life must have just been nothing but, clear sailing. But Yogananda, when he came to this country, he met nothing but test after test. From actually trying to get on the city of Sparta, which was the first boat that sailed from India to America after World War I. That story, in and of itself, is an incredible miracle. He went to the man and said, "You don't have a passport, you don't have your papers." And he said, Yogananda just said, "Where's my birth?" And the man said, "Well, you don't have a passport, you don't have the right papers." And he said, "But there is a berth for me on this boat." And he said, "There's no openings, you cannot come." And through a series of miracles, Yogananda was able to get on that ship and come to America. And of course, when he came to America in 1920, think of that, an Indian man, ochre, long flowing hair. Even today we're still battling racism in this country. Think of the thick fog of delusion that he had to pierce with the clear light of his heart. And there was the story which many of you have seen in the documentary Awake, when he went to Miami and they kicked him out of Miami as this heathen Hindu and this sort of thing. So if we are sincere in our spiritual quest, God will send us test after test. And it's not, why does God test us? It's not like, little Johnny cheating off Fred's paper there. It's really why are we tested? Because it's for us. It's not God is vindictive or judgmental or trying to punish us. We need to be convinced to the core of our being. We need to not just believe, we need to know. Self-realization, how Yogananda defined that spiritual power that lies within us. We need to be so rooted in that realization that nothing can remove us from it. As he said, stand unshaken amidst the crash of breaking worlds. And we have that crash around us today. We don't have to look far. In Los Angeles, the stock market just sold off very big on Friday. And of course, what's happening? Oh, you have money in the stock market, now your money is worth less. Where is our real power? Where does our real wealth come from? That's why these tests are given to us, so that we can make that choice and say, God is my stocks and my bonds. And He is where my real power resides. There is an incredible story I read recently of a potato farmer in Australia. And this man, he had to herd their sheep. So there was times where their sheep would get loose and he would have to run around for days at a time, 2 or 3 days, nonstop corralling the sheep and acting as like a shepherd. And so he was inspired to join this long distance race, and it's one in Australia. I think it's through the outback. I don't have all the details, but it's days. It's not just a marathon. It takes like a week or something like that to complete this race. So these long distance runners, they'll run and then they'll sleep, and then they'll run another 20 or 30 miles, whatever. So this potato farmer, 60-year-old man, no experience with long distance running, signs up for this ultra marathon. And he comes to the race in his overalls, in his boots, looking like a potato farmer. And all of the runners and all of the administration saying, this is crazy. You cannot run this race. And he said, no, I am running this race. I can run this race. I used to have to chase sheep around. I can run this race. And they said, please do not run this race. You will kill yourself. And he just said, no, I can do it. I'm going to run. And so he did. And so he didn't run. He actually had more of like a shuffle. He didn't have an orthodox running style. And everyone was beating him, but then they went to sleep at night and he just kept shuffling. This is a true story. This man did not stop. And eventually he caught up to them, and then he not only beat them, he beat the record by 2 days. Wow. He shattered it. Wow. Because he was convinced to the core of his being that he had that power. You have that power. God's power is within you. We sell ourselves short on the body and our personality. We're so much more than that. And how then do we face our tests in a way where we can overcome genuinely, one of the first and very important steps is for us to accept ourselves, to accept life, and to not, how much anger and frustration and anxiety and worry do we cause ourselves by just wishing the world were other than it were? Why did this come to me? Why is this happening to me? Why this? Why that? It's more important, like Swamiji is sharing here in the reading, is to ask the practical question of how. Divine Mother, how? How do I get out of it? What do you want me to do? It reminds me of that other, the man said to his friend, I failed driving school. And he said, well, what happened? He said, well, I was in the car driving with the driver, and he said, what do you do at a red light? And I said, well, first I check my texts, then I check my email, and then I check Facebook. That's our gut reaction, is to go with our subconscious tendencies of being sold on the world. But remember, between our conscious mind and our subconscious, all of our memories and our habits and our tendencies, beyond that is the layer of the superconscious. And that is your soul nature. That's, as Yogananda said, the soul's power of knowing God. And we all have that power. And it's not our power. Like when Paramahansa Yogananda asked Rajasi, his foremost disciple, he said, Rajasi, where does your power come from? And he said, I don't forget, Master. It comes from you. It all goes back to Divine Mother. And we can pass our tests, first by accepting, and then also meeting our tests with a sense of good cheer. Cheerful courage is the way that Paramahansa Yogananda described it. God will not give us a test that we cannot handle. It's really we who set ourselves up for it. It's our own karma, our own actions that we have to unwind, but we don't have to do it on our own. That is the important thing to remember, that we need to call on God. And when suffering and tests come to you, be grateful. I know that's a hard one to swallow. Hindsight is 20/20. But when we go through, isn't it true that you've gone through a test in your life that right now, you're looking back upon it, you say, God, how grateful I am for that? Because it gave me the fire and it strengthened me. Like Yogananda said, you can't become a stronger boxer by fighting with weaklings. You need to fight with stronger boxers. So when those tests come, be grateful. And of course it's not easy, but that's why we need to call on Divine Mother. Remember the story of Kunti. Kunti Devi was the mother of the three eldest Pandava brothers, Arjuna, Bhima, and Yudhishthira. And when the Pandavas were exiled, this is in the Mahabharata, the Indian epic, for 12 years in the forest, she was pining with such despair, for she could not see her sons. And through that sorrow, she just began to churn and thrash this prayer, Krishna, 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 always calling on Krishna. And with such fervor and with such zeal that Krishna came to her. And he said, my dear, your devotion and your prayers are so sincere. I shall grant you a boon. Anything you want in this world, tell me, and I shall give it to you. And Kunti responded, oh, my Lord, give me more suffering. for it is in suffering that I remember you. It's not easy. You know, Divine Mother knows that she's put us in this mud puddle of delusion. So we can vent and cry to her, but at the same time, calling on our power, the power of God within us. I went through a test. We all go through tests, but this was just one I felt inspired to share. When I first came onto the spiritual path, I came from an Italian family, so very, close-knit. They say us four and no more. In the Italians, it's like us 44 and no more. And I had a dear friend, he's still one of my dearest friends, Michael, who I grew up with in high school. He became one of my best buddies. And when I got onto the spiritual path, it caused this rift. And he thought that I was joining a cult and this sort of thing. And, he had read negative things on the internet and had never met anyone from Ananda, had never met Swami Kriyananda and all these things. But anyway, he just, unleashed a tirade of love. Because when your close ones do that, they're reaching out because they're concerned for you, they're afraid for you. But anyway, this caused a great rift in our friendship for a few years. And I distinctly remember the feeling of, well, this is a test. It's like the reading today with Christ, that how Satan came to him and said, well, if you can pray for anything, make these stones into bread and eat of them. And so on a much, smaller scale, for me, this was, your heritage, your background with being Italian, like that was, part of that was being stripped away. And it was painful that someone that I felt I was so close with, that knew me so well, could think I had fallen off the deep end and, my life was now forsaken and all these things. But I was so, of course, during it was difficult, but after I was so grateful. And Michael and I have grown even closer through that. If someone is your true friend, right, they'll see your highest happiness. And that ultimately is what the Guru is. Because we, in order to pass this test, in order to conquer delusion, we cannot do it on our own. And we cannot just we were sharing in our fire ceremony, which we do every week, and our purification, more ritual and more dogma, it doesn't work. It's as Shankaracharya said, it's mutually contradictory. As Ram sings beautifully in that song, Devil Worship, you can't put out the darkness with a stick. What we need is light. And that light comes in through our inner realization and experience. And that's why I encourage you. Please, try meditation. Try silence. Try the practice of Kriya Yoga. And you will find for yourself that long-lost friend that has always been there, right within your own heart. God bless you.